Hey guys, tonight's story begins with a banquet table, a missing turkey leg, and the quiet realization that no one dares tell you you're bleeding again. You're not just any man, you're the man, the one painted like a god, worshipped like a storm, and currently leaking through 4 layers of velvet. Someone sneezes. You shout treason. They bow. You forget why. The air smells like incense and something far less holy. A fly lands on your crown. No one moves. Because this is what it was like to be the king who rotted alive. So, before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake up in darkness, not the cozy kind that cradles your dreams, but the suffocating velvet kind that smells faintly of damp flesh, lavender oil, and something much less royal. Your curtains are drawn, not by servants but by protocol. You're the King of England. Nobody disturbs the king before he's decided how many people will live to see dinner. Your skin itches. Your leg throbs. You shift slightly, and the mattress releases a sound somewhere between a sigh and a death rattle. You've soaked through another layer of royal sheets. Again. The royal physician will say it's the fever. The priest will say it's a test. You will say nothing, because kings do not whimper before sunrise. The air is thick with your own breath, still heavy with last night's mutton and regrets. You've slept in your own juices, both bodily and political. 6 marriages, 2 beheadings, and you still can't find peace, or a position that doesn't aggravate your ulcer. You're 45 going on decomposing. A servant finally knocks. You don't say come in, you grunt. He enters anyway, eyes politely aimed at the floor, hands trembling around a silver bowl of rosewater. He avoids looking at your leg. They always avoid the leg. You can't blame them. It's no longer entirely leg-shaped. It's taken on the texture of a poorly basted ham, shiny, wet, and gently hissing. Your surgeon has stopped pretending it's healing. Now he calls it manageable, the same way diplomats describe civil wars. They bathe you slowly, like one might sponge a wounded animal too proud to die. You wheeze. They pat. You groan. They murmur apologies to God and possibly to you. The scent of rot is faint today, a small victory. The room smells like old blood and new perfume. Dressing takes an hour. Your stomach is a separate entity now, an orb of influence with gravitational pull. 2 men heave the codpiece into place. One mutters something about scaffolding. You ignore it. You are not a man. You are a monarchy, encased in silk and stitched illusions. Breakfast is waiting. It's the only time of day that brings you real joy. A goose, a pie. Another pie inside the first pie. Someone suggests fruit. You glare at them. They disappear. You eat with the urgency of someone who knows the body is a sinking ship, and each mouthful is one more nail in the coffin. But what a delicious coffin it will be. Grease coats your fingers. The dog under the table licks your foot. You kick it, gently. Your ulcer flares in protest. The dog whines. You groan louder. Across the table, your wife tries not to look disgusted. You can't remember which one this is. The 6th. She's young, quiet, and still hopeful enough to believe she might survive you. You admire her optimism. It won't last. An advisor whispers something about Spain. You wave him away. Your gout is flaring and there's a cherry tart calling your name. War can wait. You are, after all, the most powerful man in England, provided you don't try to stand up too fast. The throne room awaits. You will limp into it like a bloated war god, trailing silk, sweat, and the faint whiff of infection. They will bow. You will nod. And beneath the jewels, the robes, the pageantry, you will itch. Because kings don't suffer, kings rule and rot quietly. The sun isn't up yet, but you are. Sort of. Your body is awake, which is a generous way of saying you've regained consciousness inside a royal meat sack that groans when touched and wheezes when moved. You're not hungry in the way peasants are hungry. You're hungry in the way gods are, ravenous, unreasonable, and incapable of restraint. You demand roast beef before sunrise. The kitchen doesn't question it. They've already prepared it. You've trained your staff well, through years of sighs, firings, and the occasional execution. They bring beef, then sausages, then swan. The swan is mostly for show, but you eat it anyway, because power tastes best when it's endangered. The table groans as much as you do. This is not a breakfast. This is an act of domination over nature and digestion. You slice through rare meat with a gold-handled knife engraved with your own face. Someone tries to hand you fruit again. You pretend not to hear them. Each bite is a hymn. The fat melts, the salt bites, and the gravy flows like a minor miracle. It coats your throat, your chest, your soul. Your wife watches from across the table, daintily nibbling on a piece of bread like she's not married to a dying volcano in silk pajamas. You ignore her judgment. Bread can't compete with swan. By the third course, the sweating begins. You don't wipe it away. You let it glisten. Proof of effort, of excess, of divine suffering. The room smells of roasted animal and your ulcer. The latter cuts through everything, even the rosemary. Nobody comments. They've learned. Your stomach has shifted. It now rests heavily on your lap, like a loyal but burdensome hound. Breathing is effort. Buttoning is impossible. The codpiece stretches under strain. A footman loosens your waistband discreetly. He's a good lad. You forget his name immediately. You reach for more beef. Your fingers are slick. The plate tips. A sausage rolls onto the floor. The dog retrieves it and immediately regrets the decision. There's something off about the sausages lately, but not enough to stop you from eating 6 more. Now, the pain starts. It creeps in gently, like a courtier with bad news. First the ankle, then the knee. Then the thigh starts whispering secrets to your brain. Secrets like, "We weren't designed for this," and "You are a dying empire in the shape of a man." You try to rise. This was a mistake. The chair resists. Your legs tingle. Your belly shifts dangerously. 4 servants appear, not unlike sailors preparing to lift a beached whale. You grunt. One of them counts under his breath. On 3, they hoist. Your feet touch the ground. You do not scream. You exhale something between a curse and a prophecy. The ulcer has woken up. It pulses like it's thinking. It leaks like it's plotting. You do not look down. You shuffle 3 steps and pause to reconsider your life. Your entire body is a war crime being committed slowly, publicly, and in velvet. You're full, bloated, and somehow still hungry. But not for food, for memory, for youth. For a day when your legs did not rebel and your heart did not sound like it was skipping steps in a dance you never learned. Your wife is still watching. Her face is unreadable. She may be planning your funeral or breakfast. You stagger from the room like a king retreating from battle. Your fork is still in your hand. You have defeated meat, but at what cost? Your ankle has declared war. Not the kind fought in armor or on horseback, but the quiet, festering kind that wages itself beneath layers of swollen flesh and royal hosiery. You wake to the sound of your own breath. Labored, defensive, tinged with pain, and immediately regret having toes. One ankle in particular has taken offense to your entire existence. It's red, bulbous, and pulsing like it's keeping time with a hymn only it can hear, a hymn of vengeance. You stare at it. It stares back. It wins. Your chamberlain approaches carefully, the way one might approach a wounded bear with a crown. He asks if you'd like help dressing. You respond with a sound that rhymes with betrayal. It takes 3 men to roll silk stockings over your royal calves. You are sweating before the breeches arrive. By the time your codpiece is affixed, you've burned more calories than you did all week. Not that you're counting. You don't count. You command. Except today, you command nothing, not even your own foot. You reach for the cane, not the ceremonial one, with gold inlay and foreign gems, the real one, the one made of dark wood and desperation, the one you knighted last week in a moment of both sarcasm and necessity. Sir Walks-a-Lot, you're not proud of the name, but you are grateful for the support. You plant the cane beside your throne and attempt to rise. The effort sends a sharp white flash through your entire leg, like lightning made of glass. Your teeth clench. You do not scream. You wheeze in iambic pentameter. A footman reaches out to help. You glare at him with the intensity of a man who has executed people for less. He withdraws. You rise alone, barely, wobbling like a table with one short leg. The cane holds. The ulcer doesn't burst. This, in your world, is triumph. You begin the march. Each step is a negotiation between pain and ego. Your ankle feels like it's stuffed with broken mirrors and lit coals. You walk like a man dragging invisible chains. And yet the court bows as you pass. Not out of respect, out of habit, or fear, or pity. Maybe all 3. The parade begins down the main corridor. This is where portraits of your younger self line the walls, broad shoulders, narrow waist, eyes full of conquest. You pass them like ghosts, each painting a reminder of a man who once danced, who once jousted, who once leapt onto horses without assistance. Now you're lucky if you can mount a staircase without writing a will. A servant offers you a chair. You pretend not to hear him. Another tries to suggest a litter, one of those silk-curtained boxes carried by men less important than you. You wave it away like a bad smell, which is ironic considering you are the source of several. At last, you reach the council chamber. You collapse into the chair with the grace of a landslide. The court pretends not to wince. Your foot throbs visibly. It's pulsing like it wants a seat at the table. You consider naming it Lord Gout, Duke of Swelling. An advisor begins speaking. You nod, though you're not listening. All you can hear is the rhythmic drumbeat of your own inflammation, echoing through your bones like a royal procession gone terribly, terribly wrong. This is not a court. It's a battlefield. And your leg is winning. She's sitting across from you again, fresh-faced, composed, and chewing her food, like it might escape if she doesn't keep it under control. You, on the other hand, have just finished your second helping of potted eel and are now eyeing the roast pheasant like it personally owes you money. The table between you groans with gravy boats, goose fat, and your sheer gravitational presence. This is marriage. Not the fairy tale kind with violins and sonnets. This is Tudor marriage, political, strategic, conducted under the flickering torchlight of suspicion and duty. You are the king. She is the wife. Number 6, to be precise, the survivor, so far. She still flinches a little when the leg twitches. It does that now. Spasms like it's trying to write its own will. The ulcer's been active since morning. You've kept it swaddled in linen, herbs, and lies, but it still makes itself known. There's a scent, faint but assertive, hovering over the lamb stew like a bad omen in a satin room. Your queen says nothing. She is trained not to. You respect that, but her eyes betray her, drifting toward the leg, then darting away, like startled pigeons. She reaches for her goblet. It's empty. You motion to a servant who nearly knocks over a jug trying to reach her in time. You sip from your own cup. Wine, thick, sweet. It coats your teeth. You glance at her, smirking. She smiles back, but it's the kind of smile one gives a bear who hasn't decided whether it's hungry or just irritable. You are both. The hunger is constant now, not just for food, but for distraction. Something to push back against the ache, the heat, the knowledge that your body is no longer a temple. It's a collapsing cathedral filled with incense, creaking timbers, and rodents with tenure. A footman presents a dish. Custard tarts with almond glaze. You gesture approvingly. He bows like he's offered you a miracle. You take two. The queen does not partake. She nibbles at her vegetables. Quiet, dutiful. You wonder what she thinks about when you're not speaking. Her future, her will, the smell of decay. You'd ask, but that would require energy. And besides, you're already distracted by the way the custard clings to your tongue like a loyal subject. Your leg shifts. You wince. She sees it. She flinches again. This time you both pretend not to notice. Marriage is compromise. Love is fantasy. And dinner is survival. A lute plays faintly from the corridor. One of your musicians. You used to love music. Now it sounds like someone plucking nerves with greasy fingers. You clear your throat. The queen looks up, startled. For a moment, there's something like hope in her expression. Maybe you'll ask about her day. Maybe you'll praise her dress. You reach for the salt. The moment dies. You glance at your plate. Still food left. Still time to fill the silence with chewing and the illusion of control. You are king. You are husband. You are ulcerated and inconvenient. She smiles again, smaller this time. You wonder if she's counting the days. You know the courtiers are, betting on when you'll drop, when the throne will pass to someone less swollen, less fragrant. But for now, you eat, because it's what you can still do, and because being full, even briefly, feels a lot like being whole. They line up like obedient chess pieces, each one bowing just low enough to suggest loyalty without pulling a muscle. The Tudor court is a performance, one you didn't audition for, but star in regardless. You sit. No, sprawl. On your throne, legs stretched awkwardly to the side to accommodate the ulcer that refuses to be ignored. It's wrapped in linen soaked with vinegar and divine indifference. You've named it a dozen things, none of them printable. Your advisors stand before you, powdered, perfumed, and perspiring slightly. They smile with their mouths, but their eyes? Their eyes are busy stabbing each other in the back while pretending to admire the tapestries. You burp. It echoes. Deep. Regal. A declaration of digestion. They clap. Lord Suffolk's eyebrows twitch. Just slightly. But you catch it. He's probably still upset about you dismissing his nephew over that goose incident. You don't remember the goose. You remember the wine. You always remember the wine. Sir Edward begins to speak. He's talking about taxes or France or ships. You nod, slowly, pretending to listen. In truth, your mind is elsewhere. You're calculating how long you can hold this sitting position before the pain becomes biblical. Maybe 10 minutes. 15 if you don't breathe too deeply. A jester tumbles in. Not the good one, the replacement. You can tell because he hesitates at the threshold, like he's not sure whether this is a royal audience or a funeral. You gesture. He juggles. Badly. The advisors pretend to enjoy it. You yawn. The queen is absent, conveniently. She claimed to have a headache, which in this palace is code for, I'd rather be anywhere else than near your infected majesty. You can't blame her. The leg has developed a personality of its own lately. Moody, demanding, a bit theatrical. Lord Pembroke clears his throat to propose a new tariff. You interrupt with a question about roast boar. He freezes mid-sentence, then recovers, suggesting that boar imports could be taxed more aggressively. You nod. He breathes again. There's a tension in the room, that never quite dissipates, like everyone's waiting for someone else to be executed, or married, or both. Your court is a garden of fake compliments and real daggers. Every bow is an audition, every compliment a calculation. You lean forward, just enough to make them worry you might actually stand. Gasps ripple across the room like a breeze through dry leaves. You don't stand. You simply shift your weight and release another rumble from deep within your royal core. A second burp, louder than the first, triumphant. They clap again. A little longer this time. You smile. It's exhausting, being both monarch and theater director. You miss the days when you could simply point and someone would disappear. Now you have to justify it. Due cause, they say. Stability. Nonsense. Stability is overrated. So is subtlety. Someone mentions Spain. You wave them away. Spain can wait. Your leg is swelling again. You can feel it, like a traitor plotting rebellion beneath your skin. You glance down. The linen is damp. Again, you say nothing. The meeting ends when you say it does. You say it does. The room empties with practiced grace. Nobody turns their back. Nobody walks too fast. The court has learned. Fear teaches better than tutors. You're alone now, except for the smell. It's just you, and the ulcer, and the echo of applause. That wasn't for you. Not really. It was for the crown, the office, the legend, not the man. But you'll take it. It started as a scratch, a whisper of irritation just above the shin, barely worth mentioning between haunches of lamb and declarations of war. A nick, perhaps, an ingrown hair, a misstep in your daily struggle to exist as a mountain of flesh and legacy. You ignored it. Kings don't complain about scratches. But now? Now your leg has become a spectacle, a horror, a legend whispered about in corridors between servings of eel pie and slow, nervous glances. You've named it Sir Festerington, partly in jest, mostly because if you don't give it a title, it might claim one for itself. Sir Festerington is not content to be ignored anymore. You peel back the linen this morning like a man unwrapping bad news. The scent hits first, a sour, coppery sweetness that reminds you vaguely of death and strongly of the cheese cellar you ordered sealed last spring. You gag silently. You are not alone. 3 servants hold their breath with military precision, eyes fixed somewhere above your crown, pretending not to notice the wet slap of dressing detaching from skin. It oozes like overcooked pudding, grayish, yellow at the edges, speckled in crimson. If it were food, you'd have it executed. You poke it. You regret that immediately. Sir Festerington responds with a sharp, biting pulse, one that shoots up your thigh and into your skull with the clarity of divine punishment. Your entire leg twitches. A servant stumbles backward and drops the basin. It clangs. No one speaks. You reach for wine. The physician is summoned. Again, he arrives with the expression of a man who knows he will not be remembered kindly. He mutters about poultices, leeches, vinegar, cauterization. You've heard all these words before. They're just different ways of saying we still have no idea what we're doing, but we'll do it with confidence. He presses around the edges of the wound with gloved fingers. You grip the arm of your chair until your knuckles turn white. He smiles and says, "The swelling has localized." You consider throwing something at him. Your codpiece, perhaps. But it would take too much energy to remove. You ask if it's healing. He pauses. Then he says, "It is," holding steady, which is a coward's way of saying, "It is not healing, but we've run out of synonyms for decay." They rewrap it. New linens, more herbs, a sprinkle of crushed pearls, because someone told you once that pearls are holy, or antiseptic, or fashionable. You no longer care. If someone said roasted swan fat would cure it, you'd have one plucked before supper. You hobble to the throne later, accompanied by Sir Festerington's angry protest with every step. The court pretends not to notice the way you wince. They pretend not to smell the rotting beneath the velvet. They pretend so hard it has become an art form. But you know, you feel it, you carry it. You are not a king with an ulcer. You are a walking ulcer with a crown. Sir Festerington is winning. And worse, you're starting to believe he's royalty too. The thing is, you didn't set out to break Christendom in half. You just wanted to get divorced. Simple, really. The Pope said no. You said, but I'm the King of England. The Pope said no again. So you said, fine, I'll build my own church with sermons, stained glass, and a convenient lack of papal oversight. It wasn't spite, it was logistics. And now here you are, supreme head of the Church of England, defender of the faith, depending on whose faith we're talking about, architect of theological upheaval, and still tragically, profoundly alone at the breakfast table. 6 wives, 6. A collection so cursed, it could be its own book of Revelation. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, surviving. Somehow. You can't remember if the current one actually loves you or is just very good at pretending she doesn't smell your leg. Either way, she hasn't fled. Yet. Across the hall, monks sing in a chapel that didn't exist before you decided Rome was inconvenient. Your kingdom now worships under a banner of your own making. They pray in English. They confess to men you appointed. You changed the soul of a nation because one woman couldn't give you a son, and another woman could, until she couldn't, and another promised to try, and another screamed too much, and another said nothing at all. You did this. Not a council, not a doctrine. You. And still, no one wants to touch your ulcer. This is the great irony. You split with the Vatican, rewrote the rules of heaven and earth, and still cannot find a woman who finds you bearable once the swelling begins. You are God's chosen monarch, anointed in oil, drowning in meat sweats and bandages. You hear whispers in the court, not loud ones. Whispers never are, but persistent. He limps more now. The leg's gotten worse. She cried again last night. He smells like spoiled milk and divine punishment. You laugh when you hear it, because it's true, but also because it hurts less than screaming. Sometimes, you remember the first queen, Catherine, proper, devout. She stood beside you in war, in pageantry, in prayer. She loved you until you needed an heir more than a wife. Then came Anne, fiery, clever, beautiful. She gave you a daughter. You gave her a scaffold. Then Jane, sweet, pale Jane, the one who gave you a son, the one who died doing it. She's the only one you speak to in your sleep when the pain is bad and the wine doesn't work. The rest blur together. French gowns, tired sighs, closed doors. One of them read scripture aloud when you couldn't sleep. You think it was Anne of Cleves. Or maybe you imagined it. Your current queen smiles too much. You don't trust it. The church bells ring again. You shift in your chair. The ulcer squelches. The sound is wet and cruel. You wave for more wine. They call you defender of the faith, but no one asks if you have any left. You're not sure. Faith in what? God? Yourself? The idea that someone might love you even as your body collapses into something that leaks? You made a church. You made it so you could marry again, and again, and again. And you are still, impossibly, unlovable. They arrive at dawn, like undertakers with good posture. 4 men, trained in the art of lifting you without eye contact or emotional attachment. Their faces are blank. Their hands are steady. They carry the silence of men who have seen too much and been paid too little. It's time for the bedpan. You groan before they even touch you, not out of pain, though there is plenty of that, but out of sheer humiliation. You are Henry VIII, King of England, France, in theory, Ireland, in progress, and defender of the faith, depending on the week. You have changed the face of religion. You have rewritten the fate of nations. And now you are a man who cannot relieve himself without choreography. 2 prayers are said, one silently, by the footman who draws the curtain, the other aloud. By the priest you insisted be present, for dignity. He's new, young, he still believes in things. The bedpan is placed with the reverence of a relic. Pewter, cool to the touch, blessed, allegedly. You once demanded a golden one, but it turned out to be a terrible conductor of comfort and was repurposed as a baptismal font. The men take their positions. You grunt. They lift. Your joints crack in protest. Your ulcer lets out a quiet squelch, like wet leather beneath a boot. No one reacts. They've learned. You hover. The groaning begins. It starts low, like a distant foghorn, then builds through your spine, your chest, your teeth. Your face contorts. Your crown slides slightly off-center. Someone steadies it. Not for your pride, but for optics. The priest begins a second prayer. This one's improvised, you can tell. His voice quivers. He stumbles on, mercy. You consider firing him. But that would require speaking, and your current focus is survival. Minutes pass, or years. It's difficult to tell in the kingdom of the bedpan. Finally, movement. You exhale like a man emerging from battle. The physician, who has been lurking just outside the curtain, listens attentively. He'll ask about consistency later. He always does. It's part of your royal health ledger, alongside general bloating and smells of salted pork. The deed is done. Now comes the exit. 4 men, 2 groans, 1 near slip. The ulcer nearly reopens. You gasp. One of them apologizes to God, another to you. You wave a hand. It's not forgiveness. It's fatigue. The bedpan is whisked away, covered, handled like unstable treasure. Somewhere in the palace, a servant will pour it into the royal cesspit and say nothing. Another will scrub it and stare into the middle distance for the rest of the morning. You are lowered back onto your cushions, carefully. 1 inch too fast, and you'd scream loud enough to summon bishops. You don't scream, not today. Just a long theatrical sigh. The room clears. The priest lingers, asking if you'd like to hear psalms. You decline. You've had enough divine intervention for one morning. He bows, his nose wrinkles, subtly. You catch it. You catch everything. You are alone now, king of 10 million souls, and 1 ulcer. The chamber pot sits in the next room like a mute witness. The linens are damp. Your pride is perforated. But the throne awaits. The other throne. And you will go. After a nap. The map is spread before you, like a lover you no longer recognize. Red pins, blue pins, little carved boats, tiny horses frozen mid-gallop. The battlefield in miniature. You squint at it, hoping the pins will move on their own and make a decision for you. They do not. You declare war. Not with a sword, or a rousing speech, or even a rattle of armor. No, you declare war from a chair, a very ornate chair, with wheels. 4 servants stand at the corners like pallbearers, waiting for your signal to roll you into glory, or at least the next room. You're too bloated to ride. Your thighs are swollen. Your gout flares if you so much as dream of a saddle. The last time you tried to mount a horse, 3 men dislocated various parts of their dignity trying to keep you upright. So now you command from your mobile throne, a leather-clad monument to stubborn royalty and strategic immobility. You raise a hand. The room stills. A breathless hush falls upon your council, like they're about to witness divine judgment or an ill-timed fart. You gesture to France. Specifically, to the map's version of France, where a tiny wooden fortress has been placed precariously on the border, like it knows what's coming. "We move," you say, as if your bloated leg isn't currently elevated on a silk cushion beneath the table, as if you could charge into battle on anything faster than a prayer. But they nod. They always nod. That's the rule. The king points. The kingdom obeys. Someone asks about provisions. Someone else asks about naval support. You burp magnificently, and the room adjusts its expectations. The general writes something down, likely a revised timeline that factors in the pace of your chair and the frequency of your digestive events. You are terrifying and heavily perfumed. The latter helps the former. Lavender mostly, a bit of rosewater, musk, on days when the leg is especially pungent. Today is a musk day. The ulcer has been muttering beneath your robes like a political dissenter. You pretend not to hear it. Your queen does not attend these councils anymore. The last time she did, she fainted after catching a glimpse of your leg dressing when it slipped mid-decree. The wound has a way of asserting itself in conversation, even when uninvited. A young lord dares to question the strategy. You stare him down, not because he's wrong, but because you've forgotten his name, and disapproval buys you time. He stammers. Someone coughs. A fly buzzes near your ear and narrowly avoids execution. Outside, the court thinks you're preparing for campaign, that you're rallying for conquest. Inside, you're sweating through your third set of undergarments and trying not to pass wind while seated too high above everyone else. But this is kingship. Theater, fragrance, immobility, disguised as might. You end the meeting with a dramatic wave. 2 guards roll you away as if you're about to be embalmed. The throne creaks. The pins on the map remain still. You are Henry, 8th of your name. You do not ride. You do not march. You do not sweat. You glisten with consequence. And the war will wait for your bath. The room is dark, but not empty. The fire crackles low in the hearth. Shadows gather in the corners like old debts, familiar and unpaid. The servants have long since retreated. The physician has left his herbs. The wine has warmed in its goblet. And you sit in your chair, bloated, sweating, leg elevated like a relic that should have been buried years ago. This is the hour they visit you. Not the court, not the physicians, not even the queen, who pretends to be asleep in the other wing. No, this is the hour of the wives. 6 queens, 6 thrones, 6 experiments, in hope, politics, and failure. You hear her first. Catherine, the original, dutiful, patient, Spanish. She whispers through the tapestries, her voice laced with prayers you haven't heard since you still believed in something other than your appetite. She gave you her youth, her womb, her loyalty. You gave her exile. Then Anne, the clever one, the spark. You chased her like a starving man, and she let you believe you'd earned her. She smiles in your memory, all ambition and sharp edges. You built a church to have her, and then you built a scaffold to forget her. She still visits, still laughs, still accuses you with her silence. Jane floats past, next, pale, gentle, ghost-like, even when she was alive. You loved her, or at least the idea of her. She gave you your son, and then she died before you could ruin her like the others. She's the only one you miss, the only one who doesn't scream. Anne of Cleves doesn't haunt you so much as loiter. Her memory lingers with the scent of annulment and quiet triumph. You never loved her, barely touched her. She walked away with a pension and her head intact. The only woman who escaped you, by smiling and saying nothing. Catherine Howard appears in a flash of youth and terror. A girl, really. Barely more than a child, caught in a palace of wolves. You thought you could recapture passion. Instead, you got betrayal. Or what you called betrayal. Her tears still stain the edges of your sleep, You had her killed, and then complained about the weather. Then there's the last Catherine Parr, the survivor, the nurse, the one who sits by your bedside and pretends not to notice the smell. She's still alive, and that might be worse than the ghosts. She loves God more than you, which is fair. You wouldn't love you either. 6 queens, 2 beheadings, 1 who lived, and yet somehow still, you sit here in the dark and believe you're the one who suffered. You, the one who couldn't be loved without power, the one who confused silence for loyalty, the one who looked for heirs and ended up with echoes. The ulcer pulses, a reminder that your body is as unforgiving as your conscience. You shift in your seat. The fire pops. Somewhere, outside the door, a servant listens, just in case the king calls out. But you don't. You never do. Because in your mind, you're not the villain. You're the wounded hero, the betrayed husband, the misunderstood god king surrounded by ungrateful wives and unworthy courtiers. But deep down, beneath the robes and the titles, in the quiet stink of your own rot, you know the truth. You were never hunted. You were the hunter who ate everything he caught and wondered why he was still hungry. It used to be easy. You'd wake before dawn, press your palms to your hips, and admire the frame of a man carved for battle and diplomacy. Your shoulders were wide, your waist slim, your legs thick with horse muscle. You didn't just wear armor. You filled it. Courtiers whispered about your calves. Queens flushed at your gaze. Mirrors flattered you. Painters competed to immortalize you. That was then. Now, the mirror flinches before you do. You're alone mostly. The attendants have left for the night, muttering about ointments and fresh linens. Even they have their limits. You stand, barely, before the great looking glass in your private chamber, clutching the edge of a table for balance. It's silent, save for your breathing, which comes in short, wheezing bursts like a winded bear attempting discretion. And there it is, your reflection. The man in the mirror is not a king. He is a roasted turnip in velvet, a sweaty, swollen monument to excess. The royal gut pours over your waistband like an act of treason. Your skin is flushed, blotched with heat, stretched taut across a belly that no longer respects architecture. Your eyes, once sharp, have retreated into puffy hollows. Your chin has become chins. Your beard clings on like a remnant of better decisions. The mirror does not blink. You wish it would. You adjust your crown. It doesn't help. If anything, it highlights the absurdity. Majesty perched atop meat. A jewel-encrusted apology for decay. The ulcer throbs beneath your robes. You don't need to look at it anymore. You feel it pulsing in time with your heart, which now ticks like a hesitant drummer late to his own funeral. You raise a hand. The man in the mirror does the same, reluctantly. His fingers are sausage thick, bejeweled, and shaking slightly. You once played the lute. Now you can barely hold a goblet without resting afterward. You used to be Henry the Magnificent, Henry the Lion, Henry the Hawk of England. Now, you're Henry the Immovable Object. You lean in closer. Bad decision. The breath fogs the glass instantly. Your pores glisten like overripe fruit. You try to smile. The mirror offers a grimace that looks more like indigestion. Your nose twitches. Something smells warm, faintly spoiled. Definitely you. You exhale loudly. Your knees creak. A vein throbs in your temple. You whisper something. Not a prayer, not quite a curse. Just sound. Just proof you're still here. The mirror cracks. A fine line, from top to bottom, barely audible, but clear. A spiderweb fracture across your distorted face. You step back, slowly, carefully, not because of fear, but because your body doesn't respond to commands as it once did. You used to charge into battle. Now you calculate the distance to the nearest chair with military precision. You drop into the seat behind you with a grunt. The mirror remains upright, fractured, but still standing, like you. This is the cost of everything. The wars, the wives, the feasts, the divine rights. This reflection, this swollen monument to appetite and ambition. No one painted this version of you. No one wrote sonnets to Sir Festrington and the man he conquered from the knee down. But you look anyway, because this too is kingship. To witness your own decline with open eyes and say, yes, I am still king, even if the mirror no longer agrees. He arrives every morning like a man approaching a cursed statue. The royal surgeon, third of his name, trained in Italy. Or maybe he just said that once and no one bothered to check. His credentials are parchment thin, but his confidence is ironclad. He bows low, not out of respect, but so he doesn't have to meet your eyes while he unveils the leg. You're propped up on pillows that stopped being comfortable 3 monarchs ago. The sheets are damp. The ulcer pulses beneath its wrapping like something alive and displeased. He peels the bandage back with the reverence of a man unwrapping an angry saint. A faint sucking sound accompanies the reveal. The smell escapes first, ripe, wet, almost floral, like lilies in a thunderstorm, or rotting meat blessed by incense. One of the footmen gags into his sleeve. You appreciate the effort. The surgeon grunts. That's his diagnosis. He leans in, prods, pokes, lifts the edge of necrotic tissue with something that looks suspiciously like a dinner knife. He mumbles to himself. Latin? Prayer? Or just a list of excuses he'll offer when this inevitably gets worse. He applies goose fat. Again. Why? No one knows. It's become ritual. Like communion, but oilier. You ask if the leg is improving. He says, it's reacting, which is not an answer. You ask if it will heal. He says, eventually, all things resolve. You stare at him. He adjusts his collar. A drop of sweat rolls down his temple and vanishes behind his ear like a deserter. Once, this leg carried you into tournaments, into beds, into battle. It kicked a traitor once, a proper arc, right into the ribs. The man vomited blood. You were proud. Now it barely holds the weight of your regret. The surgeon dabs the wound with vinegar and mutters about humors. Too much black bile, or maybe yellow, or possibly not enough prayer. He applies a paste of ground pearls and mashed figs. You're not sure if he's treating you or marinating you. You wince. He steps back. He calls for fresh linens. You smell cooked onions. That's new. You ask if amputation is necessary. He goes still. Then, Majesty. The leg is part of your majesty. That means yes. But no one wants to be the man who suggests separating the king from his own flesh. It feels treasonous. Instead, he layers more bandages. Tight, scented, decorative, almost. As if a nicer ribbon will fool the rot. He bows again, avoiding eye contact, and retreats like a courtier leaving a dragon's lair. You are left alone with your thoughts and your leg. It throbs in time with your heart, maybe faster, like it's trying to beat on its own. You wonder what it wants. Freedom? A title? Recognition? You consider naming it again. Sir Festrington still fits, but perhaps it's risen in rank. Outside, birds chirp. Inside, your body rebels. This is what it means to be king now. Not to rule, but to endure. To outlast your own deterioration long enough to sign one more decree, marry one more nursemaid, and maybe, just maybe, outlive your enemies. The battlefield is no longer France. It's your leg, and your surgeon just lost another round. It starts before you enter the room. A shift in the air, a ripple in conversation, a subtle recoil that begins in the nostrils and ends in the spine. People brace for it. Brace for you. Not your authority, not your voice. Not even the crown on your head, or the velvet dragging behind you like a blood-soaked curtain. No. They brace for the smell. You've tried everything. Fresh herbs, bundles of mint and thyme hung around the chamber like garlands at a funeral. Lavender satchels tucked into your sleeves. Sage burned until the drapes turned gray and the priest had a coughing fit. Rosewater is poured into your bath, then again into your boots, and again across your pillows. You even tried bathing your leg in it. The ulcer just hissed. Nothing works. The smell remains. It is not one scent. It is a symphony. A layered, complex perfume of decay. The base note is meat. Old, forgotten meat, left in the sun, and then baptized in regret. On top of that is vinegar. And something sourer still, like milk, that remembered it used to be alive. There's a hint of iron, a suggestion of something floral, but wrong. Wilted daisies in a stagnant pond, sweetness rotting into threat. And it follows you, everywhere. You step into court, and the room adjusts its expectations. Courtiers inch apart, fans flutter. A servant coughs discreetly into his sleeve. The queen has developed a habit of breathing through her mouth when she stands beside you. You told yourself it was affection. Then you notice the handkerchief she keeps soaked in citrus oil. You try to joke about it. Once you declared, "A king must be remembered, if not by deed, then by scent." The laughter was thin, polite. One man choked on his wine. He's since transferred to Ireland. Today, the stench is especially defiant. You've had the leg wrapped in linen, steeped in cloves and orange peel. You smell like a pie, a cursed pie. But even that is losing the battle. You lean forward on your cane, newly polished, ivory-handled, a gift from someone hoping for land, and you feel the ulcer shift. It squelches, a small noise, soft, but enough. A courtier near the window flinches. Another crosses himself. The queen does not appear. The council speaks quickly today. Their votes are unanimous. Their suggestions deferential. You could suggest war with Constantinople, and they'd nod if it meant ending the meeting 5 minutes earlier. Someone mentions health. You raise an eyebrow. He goes pale. The room falls silent. You lean back. The smell leans forward. Later, in your chambers, you peel away the linen yourself. The wound greets you, like an old friend, who owes you nothing. It bubbles faintly. The edges are purple. A greenish film glistens in the candlelight. It smiles, in its way. You pour rosewater over it. It laughs. You call for the herbs again. The basil is fresh. It wilts upon approach. You ask yourself if this is what death smells like, or if this is something worse. A half-death, a lingering, a rot that refuses to finish the job. You close your eyes. Even there, it follows. The decree went out on a Tuesday. No more beards. Not in court. Not in church. Not within 2 miles of your dinner table. Facial hair was declared unclean, unsightly, and most importantly, unroyal. Beards belonged to philosophers, peasants, and foreign kings, with poor hygiene and worse advisors. You wanted necks smooth, chins obedient, and jawlines reflecting the divine geometry of your own. That was 10 years and 60 pounds ago. Now, you have a beard, a thick one, patchy in places, wiry in others. It clings to your face like a protest, like it grew not because you wanted it, but because your body decided it was time to hide your jaw out of mercy. It's gray in streaks and always damp, from soup, mostly, sometimes sweat, occasionally worse. No one says a word, because technically, you never repealed the beard ban, you simply ignored it. which means everyone else must pretend not to see the contradiction sprouting from your royal jowls. Courtiers keep their faces clean-shaven and their eyes above your nose. The royal painter carefully omits it from your portraits. Your surgeon trims around it with the delicate horror of a man harvesting mushrooms in a plague swamp. You catch your reflection in the silver basin one morning, distorted but unmistakable. You look like a prophecy gone wrong, a bloated falcon, a lion who gave up halfway through grooming. There's food in it, definitely. You think it's fig, but it might be last week's duck. You pick at it with a jeweled finger and stare into the basin like it owes you an apology. The beard, of course, was not your choice. It began after the third leg infection, when lifting a razor became an ordeal and trusting anyone near your face felt like a gamble. Then came the boils. Then, the fatigue. Somewhere between the bleeding gums and the failing kidneys, you forgot about vanity. Or maybe vanity forgot about you. The queen says nothing about it, not to your face. But you caught her once, laughing behind a screen with her ladies-in-waiting. You heard the word hedgehog. You didn't ask for context. You considered shaving it once. Sat in the chair, held the blade, saw your face underneath, pale and bloated and soft. You looked like a ghost who still ate 4 meals a day. So the beard stayed. You've begun to stroke it during council meetings, absent-mindedly. The advisors flinch each time. No one knows whether it signals thought or impending wrath. You like that. You once punished a duke for arriving with stubble, fined him a month's income, and made him eat facing the wall. Now your beard scratches against your collar while you wheeze through decrees about trade and taxes and which bishop looked at you sideways during Mass. You are still the law, even if you no longer match your own portrait, even if the scent of gravy clings to your chin like a second crown, even if your own courtiers fear becoming what you already are. The beard has won, and you let it, because deep down, under the robes and ointments and declarations, you know what they all know. Fashion is power, but decay is universal. The table groans beneath the weight of it all. Meat, mostly. Glorious, glistening meat. Ducks stuffed with pears. Geese glazed with honey. Swans arranged in poses they never agreed to. Eels coiled in decorative spirals. And pies. Sweet, savory, suspicious. A crust of ambition on every dish. You sit at the head, already sweating. Not from effort, just from existing. The wine is warm. The air is warmer. Your sleeves are soaked by the time the second course arrives. You haven't spoken yet. No need. Your appetite does the talking. You reach for the roast. A boar, its mouth stuffed with apples and irony. The knife strains in your hand. A servant rushes to help. You wave him off, pretending your fingers don't ache, that your wrists haven't gone soft. You slice. Meat falls apart obediently. You've always liked that about meat. It never questions, never prays, never asks for annulment. You chew slowly. The ulcer in your leg pulses in rhythm with your jaw. You try to ignore it. Pain means you're still alive. Hunger means you're still king. Parliament sent a letter today. You didn't read it. Something about taxes, or war, or taxes for war. You rolled it up and gave it to your hound to chew. He showed more interest than you did. A song begins in the next room. Lutes. A woman's voice. Something about spring and longing and other nonsense for people who can still walk without assistance. You wave a turkey leg in appreciation. Your queen is not present. She's praying, which you've learned is code for avoiding your smell. Wise woman, you raise a goblet to her absence. May it last. Another dish is brought. Quail inside a pheasant inside a deer. You call it the apology. No one laughs. They never do. Across the table, your advisors nibble politely. They barely chew. Their plates are still full. They watch you with a mixture of awe and caution, like priests at a volcano's edge. You remember when you used to dine with energy, when you could laugh and flirt and rise from the table under your own power. Now every meal is a negotiation between gluttony and gravity. Still, it's worth it. Because food doesn't ask questions. It doesn't care about your leg or your wives or your soul. It doesn't care about the Protestants or the Pope or the people starving 3 villages over. It is flesh and fat and salt. And it reminds you, with every bite, that you are still king. You are still here. The meat sweats arrive like old friends. You loosen your collar. The physician will say something tomorrow about moderation. You'll pretend to listen, then ask for more bread. A messenger appears at your elbow. He bows. He carries news from Scotland. You dismiss him with a flick of your hand and a splatter of gravy. He leaves stained and unacknowledged. Later tonight, they'll drain your leg again. Change the bandages. Burn the linens. You'll pretend to sleep while your body invents new ways to betray you. But right now, you are full. The room stinks of power and poultry. And for the briefest moment, the pain dulls, the doubts vanish. You lift your goblet once more, to no one in particular, and murmur, to the feast. Because if you can't outrun death, you can at least out-eat it. You have a quill. You have ink. You have time. So much time. Enough to sit beneath the groaning weight of your own skin and attempt tenderness with a hand that can barely grip a spoon. Your leg is elevated, festering under layers of linen and denial, and you have just composed the first stanza of what you are certain will be remembered as a masterpiece. It reads, "My tender heart, though torn and worn, still beats for thee, each pus-filled morn." You pause, satisfied. It's honest, if nothing else. You're writing again. Not laws or declarations or death warrants, though they often overlap. This is poetry, the kind that once made ladies sigh and courtiers pretend to understand. You used to be good at it, back when your fingers weren't sausages wrapped in rings, back when your mind was sharper than your appetite. But now the verses come out like confessions, unfiltered, unrefined, something between love and legacy. You want to believe this is romance, but deep down, you know, it's preparation. These are not love songs. These are goodbye notes with rhythm. Your pen scratches across the parchment like a dying beetle. The ink runs, your wrist aches, you switch hands, but the left one trembles worse than the right. No matter. You were never afraid of a little mess. Most of your life is one. You reach for the next line. Though time hath carved upon my flesh, my thoughts of thee remain still fresh. It's not subtle, but subtlety was never your genre. You once wrote to Anne like a soldier pleading for rescue, to Jane like a child begging for safety, to Catherine Parr like a man hoping she wouldn't run. Now you write to no one, or maybe to everyone, or maybe to the mirror that cracked and refused to heal. The ink blots. You curse softly. The servant in the corner pretends not to hear. He's young, new, still under the impression that you're brilliant. You let him believe it. You need someone too. Outside, the chapel bells ring. Inside, your heart joins in. Off tempo, off key, and far too loud. You breathe deep. The ulcer hisses. Your beard catches a drop of sweat before it hits the page. You try again. If death should knock, I shall not flee, but ask if he's more fair than thee. There, that one's decent. You underline it twice. You glance toward the pile of drafts beside you, dozens of them, crumpled, blood-spotted, watermarked with old wine and fresh regret. Most are unusable, some are laughable. One simply reads, "My love is strong, though my leg smells wrong." A keeper, maybe. Your queen hasn't read any of them. You haven't decided if that's kindness or strategy. She smiles at you often, but so did Anne. And Anne lost her head for smiling at the wrong time. You finish the poem. Seal it with wax. Press your ring into it. No name, no title, just a smudge of authority and a lingering scent of dried rosewater and age. Will it be found one day? Will they read it aloud centuries from now and mistake it for metaphor? Will they know the rhymes were desperate, that the tender heart was surrounded by rotting meat, and that the thee was probably yourself? It doesn't matter. You have written, and in that moment at least, you are still the king. The hall is quiet, too quiet. There are musicians, yes. A lute player strumming something that might once have been a song. A drummer tapping like he's unsure if he's allowed to be heard. And the jester, brightly dressed, nervously blinking, stands near the fire, pretending to juggle. He's dropped 2 oranges and a spoon, and no one laughs, not even him. You are slumped in your chair, robed in red, bloated in every direction. Your leg is elevated on a pillow that used to be gold, but now looks like surrender. The ulcer beneath the dressing is restless tonight. It has moods now, seasons, political opinions. The smell is creeping, not yet dominant, but present, like a threat left on the doorstep. Once, this room rang with laughter. You used to laugh so hard your crown slid forward, so loud that dogs barked outside. You'd call for more wine, demand a second performance, throw coins at jesters like blessings. Your laugh could redeem a bad pun. It could drown out the ulcer's whisper. Now, they're afraid to make you laugh, because they don't know what will happen if you try. Your lungs don't like surprises, neither does your bladder. And if you laugh too hard, something somewhere might split open, and nobody wants to mop that up again. So the jesters improvise carefully. They rehearse their mistakes. They rely on pratfalls instead of punchlines. No jokes about weight, no jabs about smell, no impersonations of kings, especially not kings who currently have a reputation for bleeding when startled. The youngest jester, the new one with the dimples, tries a joke about a goose in a bishop's hat. It lands with a splat. The bishop, seated near the back, does not smile. Neither do you. Not because it was offensive, because it was terrible. You shift in your seat. The ulcer shifts back. A sound escapes you. Not quite a groan, not quite a sigh. Somewhere between indigestion and ancient grief. The jester hears it and takes 3 steps back, smiling as if you've just applauded. You miss real laughter. The kind that made your ribs ache and your guards pretend not to smirk. You remember Anne, before the scaffolds, laughing with you about the Pope's beard. You remember Jane reading you rhymes and snorting into her sleeve. You remember jesters who weren't afraid to tease you because you were once a man who could take a joke. You were once a man who could walk away from one. Now, even your shadow hesitates to follow. You raise a hand. The hall freezes. The jester stops mid-juggle. A plum hits the floor and rolls toward the queen's empty chair. You point at him. He bows. Too fast. Nearly falls. Smiles through the fear. Do something funny, you say. Your voice is hoarse. Not from yelling, but from being unused. He gulps, begins a dance. It's clumsy, desperate. He waves his arms like a duck in distress. It is not funny. You don't laugh. You don't scowl either. You just sit. You are a monument now, a great stone face that once roared and now only murmurs. The room begins to breathe again. The jester bows. The music resumes, softer than before. Everyone pretends the air doesn't taste metallic. You sit in silence and remember when laughter lived here. Now it visits, briefly, nervously, and always with one foot out the door. The throne squeaks again. It's a small sound, barely audible over the rustle of robes and the polite cough of some unfortunate diplomat, but in your head it echoes like cannon fire. The great chair beneath you, carved from centuries-old oak and designed to outlive empires, now whines like a servant carrying too much for too long. It shifts beneath your bulk. You shift back. A negotiation. An agreement between royalty and furniture. You are King Henry VIII, Supreme Head of the Church of England, Lord of Ireland, Defender of the Faith, and you are currently sticking to the throne. The silk beneath you is soaked. Some combination of sweat, ointment, and whatever seepage Sir Festrington, your leg, has decided to offer today. You smell like old honey and regret. The room is hot and your body hotter. Layers of velvet and fur trap your breath like a furnace. Every inch of you protests. But you sit, because this is your chair, because this is your court, because if you don't, someone else might. You used to sit here differently, straighter, lighter. You once filled this throne like it was tailored to your spine. Your legs stretched easily to the floor. Your arms rested on lion-shaped carvings like they belonged there. You were muscle then, command, fury in a doublet. People spoke of your presence like it was a weapon. Now, you sit in segments, carefully arranged. Your belly arrives before your words. Your leg throbs like a mutiny. You haven't seen your own feet in months, and yet the crown still sits on your head, heavy, firm, unmoved. You glance down, a mistake. Your leg is there, swollen, wrapped, a monument to poor decisions and unchecked appetites. It pulses. You imagine it whispering, planning a coup. It has a name, a personality. You've spoken to it in the dark when no one was around. You've cursed it, bargained, laughed with it once. It did not laugh back. Someone is speaking. A noble with a scroll. Something about borders, or grain, or a dispute with Scotland. You nod. You think you nod. Or maybe your jowls did it for you. You don't hear the words. Not really. What you hear is your younger self, thundering across the tilt yard, hair whipping in the wind, a lance poised like a promise. That boy is gone. Replaced by a man with a pulsing sore and a personal surgeon. You adjust your weight. The throne squeaks again, this time louder. A ripple runs through the court. Heads tilt. Eyes dart. You fix your gaze forward, daring anyone to laugh. No one does. Of course they don't. You're still dangerous, but not in the way you once were. Now, you're dangerous, like a fire in an old house, slow but ruinous. You close your eyes for a moment. Pretend the sweat on your brow is rain. Pretend the cushion beneath you is a saddle. Pretend your leg doesn't smell like something that lost a war. You open your eyes. Still here. Still king. Still seated on a throne that remembers a different man. A throne that holds you like an obligation. A throne that, like everyone else, is just waiting for the day it can finally breathe again. There was a time when your name cleared rooms. Not from stench, but from fear. The sound of your boots in the corridor used to make lesser men tremble. You once glared a bishop into early retirement. A single raised eyebrow from your throne could silence a feast. You ruled with fire. Quick, absolute, and sometimes unnecessarily theatrical. Now, people look at you like they're smelling onions. Not fresh onions, old ones, forgotten ones. The kind found beneath the floorboards during renovations. Soft, wet, apologizing for existing. You see it in their eyes. The servants who bow too low and breathe too shallow. The nobles who offer condolences disguised as compliments. The Queen's ladies who curtsy with their mouths closed and their minds miles away. They fear you, yes, but the way one fears a leaking barrel of something flammable, dangerous, but sad, sticky, undignified. They fear what you might still do, but they pity what you've become. Your steps are measured now, assisted. Each footfall is a committee decision. You arrive late, escorted like a relic. The fanfare still plays, but it feels thinner, like the trumpets themselves are embarrassed. You sit in the council chamber, breathing like a furnace with asthma, and the room moves around you like dancers avoiding a fallen chandelier. Parliament presents reports with words like gentle suggestion and modest concern. They treat your moods like weather, unpredictable but explainable. "He's not angry," they whisper, "just swollen." A court painter brought your latest portrait yesterday. You took one look and asked, "Is that me, or the man who ate me?" He didn't laugh. He winced. You could see the pity clinging to his brush. He tried to paint your power, but all he found was circumference. You're still feared, of course. You've executed people for less than pity. But there's a difference now. Fear once came with awe, with presence. Now it comes with hesitation. Like they're not sure if they should address you or check on you. Like they're afraid you might erupt or collapse. You bark an order. It echoes. But no one rushes. Not quite. They move like undertakers, respectful, somber, already preparing the coffin with their eyes. The jesters avoid jokes about illness now. The cooks serve smaller portions, but with bigger garnishes. Everyone pretends you're still what you were, while quietly preparing for who comes next. Even the dog looks at you differently. He used to bark when you entered. Now he whines, sits beside your leg, and sniffs the air with confusion. You once fed him from your hand. Now you drop meat, and he sniffs it first, just in case it came from you. You want to shout, to rage, to remind them, but your lungs don't like theatrics anymore. You cough instead. A wet, apologetic sound that ends with a rag and the scent of iron. You stare at the window. Outside, the world continues. Peasants toiling, merchants shouting, wind brushing through the trees like nothing's wrong. Inside, you sit. A man still crowned, still titled, still technically terrifying. But beneath the silk, the gold, the signatures on laws, no one will enforce. You're a warning wrapped in velvet, and they all know it. The brush strokes are generous, too generous. You stare at the newest portrait, unveiled with great ceremony, and wonder who that man is. Tall, broad-shouldered, a gaze like a thunderclap. Legs spread in a warrior's stance, one hand on a gilded hilt, the other resting on a hip that has never known exhaustion. The beard is regal, the eyes are sharp, and the chin, only one of them, is bold, defiant, clean. This is how history will remember you. This oil-drenched lie. The painter stands beside it, sweating through his tunic, waiting for your verdict. You nod. Because what else can you do? You can't very well tell the truth. The truth is sitting beneath you, struggling to breathe, slipping slowly into the chair like softened butter. The truth is your leg, wrapped like a haunted gift, hidden under velvet folds and the scent of clove-stuffed linen. The truth doesn't hang well on a wall. In the portrait, you are standing. In reality, you haven't stood unaided in months. Not since the last infection, not since the surgeon whispered, "It may be best to remain seated, Majesty," and you slapped him with a glove too damp to be taken seriously. But the throne, like the canvas, has memory issues. It holds your weight because it has no choice. It bears your silence like a hymn. You sit while others move. You sit while others kneel. You sit while the empire spins beneath your feet, and your own body betrays you 1 inch at a time. Still, they paint you standing, because that's what kings do. There's another portrait in the hallway, younger, you, mid-stride, sword in hand, a falcon perched on your arm, looking like it's about to recite poetry. That version of you would not recognize this one. He'd challenge you to a duel, laugh at your breath, then gallop off into a storm. You miss him. Sometimes, in dreams, you are him. Limbs that obey, organs that stay quiet. The ability to put on trousers without requiring assistance from 3 men and a prayer. You wake up gasping, the sheets twisted around your legs, the smell of the ulcer reminding you what is and what is painted. You've commissioned more portraits in the past year than you did in your entire youth. You say it's for diplomacy, for legacy, but really, you're scared of being forgotten. Or worse, remembered accurately. So the painters come. They sketch you from angles that don't exist. They erase the puffiness, the sourness, the grief. They plump the shoulders, sharpen the jaw, and place your hand on swords you can no longer lift. They do this because you pay them to, and because you are still king. You stare at the new one. The colors are rich. The robe spills like a waterfall. Your eyes, somehow, look proud, not exhausted. Your double chin is now a noble curve. Your stomach has been tucked behind shadows and perspective tricks. You say, "It will do." The painter exhales. He bows too deeply, and you catch a whiff of his sweat, fresh and frantic. You envy him. His legs work. His pride is real. Later, you sit alone in your chamber. The portrait rests against the wall. You tilt your head and try to believe it. Try to believe that man is still in there, beneath the ulcers and oils, under the years and scars. But the mirror disagrees, loudly. You look away. The painting does not blink. Your leg has become a person. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. A person real enough to have its own routine, its own bandages, and now its own servant. Thomas is his name, or maybe Richard. You've forgotten, and asking would make it worse. He's young, unfortunate, and blessed with a nose far too sensitive for this line of work. He arrives every morning with trembling hands and a pail of warm water. Sometimes it's wine, sometimes it's vinegar. Once it was holy water. That didn't help. The ulcer, Sir Festerington, as you once named it, in a fit of gallows humor, demands attention, constantly. It seeps through linen and etiquette. It bubbles in court, interrupts council meetings, and occasionally growls during Mass. It has moods. Good days are merely wet. Bad days involve smell, fever, and the soft squelching sound that turns men pale. So Thomas, or Richard, attends. He kneels, always, like a man praying to a god he's not sure deserves worship. He unwraps the bandages slowly, like he's unveiling a curse. The wound hisses in the open air. The room recoils. The dog leaves. There's a table beside your bed now, just for the leg. It has its own supplies, herbs, rags, a small bell, in case Sir Festerington desires music. The Queen suggested screens to mask the view. You suggested she leave the room. You once ruled with steel. Now you rule with the smell of death in slow motion. Servants whisper that your leg has opinions, that it dislikes Tuesdays, that it once flinched during a sermon. They joke, quietly, that the leg is the true monarch now. You don't punish them, because it might be true. Thomas hasn't made eye contact in 3 weeks. He cried yesterday, mid-dressing. A single tear down one cheek, like a knight mourning his honor. You said nothing. What was there to say? You feel it too. Not the pain that comes and goes, like an insult echoing in an empty hall. You feel the shame, the slow erosion of dignity, the understanding that you, King of England, head of the church, scourge of Rome, are now primarily a container for something medical. Physicians suggest amputation, then quickly retract it. No one wants to be the man who chopped the king in half and got invited to the funeral. So they treat it, bathe it, bless it, pray it away. It does not go away. At court, nobles stand farther back. Diplomats meet you in gardens. The jesters have stopped attending altogether. You catch their glances, aimed not at your crown, but at the footstool where your leg rests, like a guest that's overstayed its welcome. You write edicts with one hand and scratch the wound with the other. The parchments smell faintly of herbs and rot. You wonder if future historians will notice. You wonder if they'll think it was metaphor. Thomas, yes, it's Thomas, finishes the dressing. He bows, eyes red, lips tight. You dismiss him with a nod. He leaves the room backwards, like the ulcer might leap. You are left with your leg, your silent, suppurating companion. It pulses beneath the wrappings, like it's thinking, like it's dreaming. You once dreamed of conquest, of glory, of a son to carry your name. Now, you dream of amputation, and you wonder, truly wonder, which part of you they'll bury first. The candlelight flickers like it knows something you don't. Or maybe it just knows more than you do right now. It's hard to tell. The air is thick with lavender, sweat, and old prayers. You've been drifting in and out all afternoon. Half asleep, half drenched, fully annoyed. There's a bowl of something beside the bed. You think it's meant for drinking. It smells like boiled regret. You're supposed to be naming a successor. The court has been circling like buzzards, with signet rings whispering about the future, your future, which is to say, your absence from it. You called for a scroll, then forgot why. You summoned a bishop, then forgot his name. You asked for Edward, and they brought him briefly. He looked at you like a child looks at a thunderstorm, curious, cautious, already considering where to hide. Edward, your son, your pale, trembling legacy. You remember when he was born, tiny and miraculous, and covered in more midwives than dignity. You named half a palace after that moment. Now he coughs when the wind changes. The doctors say he'll grow out of it. The doctors also said your leg would heal. So your backup plan is hope. You hope he'll grow stronger. You hope the empire won't crumble. You hope history is kinder than courtiers. You hope no one notices you just tried to sign your name with the spoon. And now the curtains are moving. They shouldn't be moving. There's no breeze, no windows open, just heavy velvet swaying with intention. You narrow your eyes. The candle flutters again. There, in the fold, a face. You blink. It doesn't vanish. Anne, not a servant, not a nurse, not even a dream. Anne Boleyn, her eyes sharp, her mouth half smiling, her head exactly where it used to be. She's watching, leaning out from the curtains like a secret you thought was buried. You whisper her name. The room stiffens. Someone drops a towel. The physician mumbles something about fever. But you know fever. And this is Anne. She doesn't speak, just stares, disappointed, amused. It's hard to tell. You try to sit up, but your body rebels. Your leg twitches beneath the covers like it remembers her too. You remember the laughter, the letters, the execution. You remember the way she smelled, clove and ink. You remember convincing yourself it had to be done, that the kingdom needed it, that God approved. You remember avoiding mirrors for a year. Now she's in the curtains. Still elegant. Still dangerous. You look away. Try to focus on the task at hand. Succession. Legacy. Names on parchment that won't matter if your son dies before his beard grows in. You try to speak. Edward. You manage. But the words come out scrambled. Something between command and confession. Your hand shakes over the scroll. You meant to write a decree. Instead, you've signed your name on the corner of a napkin. Someone claps gently, as if to encourage you. The candle dies. The room darkens. Anne is gone. Or maybe she never was. You close your eyes and see her anyway, behind your lids, behind your guilt. Your air is fragile. Your conscience, worse. And your past? Still very much alive. The codpiece used to be a statement. A declaration, really. A royal punctuation mark stitched in silk and stuffed with ambition. It once stood tall at feasts, pointed at diplomats, and whispered promises your body could almost keep. It was armor and advertisement, Every tailor in the kingdom knew, when dressing the king, start with the codpiece and work outward. Now, the codpiece is more negotiation than decoration. You eye it on the dressing bench. It looks smaller. Or maybe you've expanded. It's hard to say. Everything about your body has become a sort of bloated question mark. The tailor swears the dimensions haven't changed, but the fabric is straining. The buttons are protesting. The leather whines when you breathe too hard. You attempt to dress. 3 men help. One kneels like he's performing surgery. Another holds your leg steady like it might escape. The third keeps offering compliments you didn't ask for, about your majestic proportions and robust lineage. You know what he means. He means swollen. The codpiece, once embroidered with gold thread and rumors, now groans as it's strapped into place. You feel like a roast being tied for display. The tailor pulls the final strap. Something pops. You both freeze. A button flies across the room and lands in your wine. You don't laugh. Neither does he. Instead, he clears his throat and suggests a longer tunic. You used to enjoy fashion. You were a monarch of magnificent tastes. Fabrics from France, silks from Venice, colors that screamed wealth and occasionally threatened blindness. You set trends. When you wore yellow, the court followed. When you banned beards, razors sold out. When you strutted in a peacock-feathered hat, men began walking taller just to keep up. Now, your clothes serve one purpose: containment. They wrap, they support, they hide. They cling in places you no longer wish to acknowledge. Your doublets must be reinforced. Your hose must be cut from the strongest sheep in the realm. There is stitching where there used to be pride. There are layers where there used to be shape. The queen no longer comments on your wardrobe, which is merciful. Her eyes scan past the bulges and the creases and the occasional burst seam. You suspect she knows better than to say anything. She remembers a different king, the one who entered ballrooms like a comet. Now you enter more like a boulder. You try standing. The codpiece shifts. It pinches. It accuses. You sit back down, defeated by 8 ounces of ornamental fabric. Outside, someone announces a guest. A noble, young, fit, wearing trousers that fit without negotiation. You watch him from the window, envy soaking your breath like hot wine. His codpiece looks easy, effortless. He hasn't yet reached the age where buttons break in protest. You adjust your robe. The royal seamstress suggests letting out the waistline again. You nod, not because you agree, but because pretending to care would take too much energy. The codpiece stays on. Barely. It doesn't flatter anymore. It restrains. It remembers what once was, and barely manages to hold together what still remains. You sleep in bursts now, short, frantic ones, like a drowning man coming up for air. The bed is soaked again. The sheets cling to your thighs like accusations. The chamber smells of sweat, old wine, and something faintly metallic. You ring the servant bell. No one comes. They know better than to enter too quickly. The dreams are waiting. They arrive as soon as your eyes close. Familiar, sharp, unforgiving. You see her first. Always her. Anne, her neck bare, her eyes sharp. She walks through the corridors of your mind with perfect posture and a ghost of a smirk, as if to say, "You did this, Henry. You always do." You turn in your sleep. Your leg pulses like it's dreaming too. The ulcer has its own nightmares. In them it grows teeth. You try to shift, but you're stuck to the mattress. The linen is damp, tangled, twisted beneath your hips like battlefield wreckage. You throw off a blanket. It lands with a slap. A candle flickers in the corner. The flame looks like it's judging you. You close your eyes again. Jane Seymour appears next. Pale, quiet. She says nothing, but her silence is louder than any accusation. She stands beside a crib that never stops crying. You want to tell her Edward is still alive, still coughing, still weak. You want to say something comforting, something kingly, but the words drown in your throat. Then comes Catherine Howard. She dances, spins, laughs, young enough to be your daughter, which, now that you're alone in the dark, you admit was not ideal. She runs past you in circles, always just out of reach. You chase her, but your legs don't work in the dream either. You shout her name. She turns, and then it's not Catherine anymore. It's Catherine Parr, arms crossed, glaring like a schoolteacher who knows the homework was never done. You wake with a snort, a grunt, a choking sound that echoes off the stone. Your chest heaves. The fire has gone out. Your robe is wrapped around one ankle like it tried to abandon ship during the night. You smell yourself and regret doing so. Somewhere in the dream, a goose was involved. It had your face, it wore a crown, it honked in Latin. You wipe your face with the bedsheet. It makes it worse. The damp only spreads. You wonder if there's a punishment in hell that feels like this. Eternally half asleep, surrounded by your mistakes, your meals, and the vague threat of poultry. You once slept like a soldier, head down, sword nearby, heart steady. Now you sleep like a criminal, guilty, sweating, afraid of visitors. The surgeon says the fever causes the dreams. The priest says the guilt causes the fever. You say nothing. You just keep dreaming. You close your eyes again. Anne is back. She's holding something this time. You think it's your codpiece. You think she's laughing. You hope it's just the fever talking, but the smell of her perfume is unmistakable. It lingers in the air even after you wake again, gasping, alone, clutching at the bedsheets like they might explain something. You lie still for a moment. You count your wives. 1, 2, 3, gone. You count your breaths. 1, 2, wet, shallow. You wait for the dawn. It never comes soon enough. It begins with the usual groan. Not from you, from the bed. The frame has learned your rhythms over the years. The nightly shifts, the morning lurch, the midday collapse. But today it's different. Today, it groans like it's giving up, like it's finally decided, no more majesty, no more. You open your eyes, the ceiling blinks back. Everything hurts in lowercase, not the sharp stab of youth, but the dull, spreading ache of something old and permanent. Your mouth is dry. Your leg is wet. Your stomach complains with royal authority. You reach for the bell. Someone comes. Eventually, you don't recognize them. They wear the face of someone who expected a lighter shift. You motion for help. Your voice doesn't work yet. You gesture with one finger. It's enough. Within minutes, the team assembles. 2 to lift, 1 to supervise, 1 to mop. They gather around your bed like mourners at a wake. Only the body isn't dead, just difficult. They grip the sheets like rigging on a ship. On the count of 3, they haul. You rise with all the majesty of a soggy pastry. The frame creaks. Your joints crack. One servant slips. There's a gasp. Someone steps in something that was better left, unstepped in. Your foot hits the floor. Mistake. It sends a message to your leg. Sir Festrington, who replies with fire and vengeance. You cry out. Not loudly. More like a complaint, exhaled through clenched teeth. Your body sags. The servants catch you. Barely. They pivot. Adjust. Try again. You are vertical now. Technically, it takes 2 men to hold your arms, 1 to carry the basin, and 1 to keep the chamber pot from tipping during the shuffle. Your knees wobble, your robe slips. Someone sees something they shouldn't. No one makes eye contact. You smell yourself. It's hard to describe. A blend of damp parchment, pickled onions, and faint regret. Your breath smells like history repeating itself, a reminder that the sins of the past tend to ferment when left unattended. You ask for water. It arrives. You forget what you asked for and throw it at someone. You apologize, sort of. You shuffle 3 steps. Collapse. The men catch you before you become legend. They guide you back to the bed. The same groan greets you as you sink in, heavier than you were 10 minutes ago. You stare at the ceiling again. Same ceiling. Different you. You used to rise with purpose. Sword at your side. Destiny in your chest. You once raced the sun. Now the sun wins. Every time. You wonder if it's noticed. The physician enters. He inspects you like a man reading bad news. He taps your knee. You don't feel it. He touches your brow. He frowns. He sniffs. He flinches. He whispers something about decline. You hear it. You want to argue. But the effort it would take to form a rebuttal is more than you have left this morning. Maybe this day. Maybe forever. The servants redress the bed. They murmur to each other in words, meant to soothe themselves more than you. You hear fever, setback, rest. You think ending. You close your eyes again, just for a moment. Just until someone brings breakfast. Just until the leg stops pulsing. Just until the memory of being able to stand isn't so loud. They gather in the chamber because you ordered it. Or rather, because you wheezed something that sounded like an order. Your breath is no longer a tool. It's a negotiation. Every syllable you produce feels borrowed, rented, paid for with a pound of dignity and a pint of sweat. Still, they come. The nobles, the bishops, the men who once raced to catch your gaze now inch toward you like you're contagious, which in fairness you are. Your physician swears the infection isn't airborne, but your aura suggests otherwise. You're propped up in your chair, part man, part furniture, fully embalmed in robes and ointment. A tapestry behind you flutters, as if it's trying to escape the room. You blink. They interpret it as permission to speak. First, Lord Chancellor. His words are crisp, careful. He talks about grain taxes and shipping lanes. You cough halfway through. He bows and sits down immediately. Good instinct. Next comes the Archbishop. He quotes scripture, something about strength and weakness, something about divine testing. He avoids your eyes. Your leg groans beneath the wrapping. The Archbishop retreats before finishing his verse. Then, your son's tutor. He brings reports on Edward's progress. Latin, arithmetic, the Psalms. Edward is obedient, they say. Eager, pale. The tutor is sweating. You suspect he has already written his resignation letter. He bows so low you worry he might never get up again. You blink. The room tightens. Nobody mentions the smell. The Queen is absent, conveniently so. She claims to be attending to sick children in the north. You are the sick child now. No one says it aloud, but the silence between topics says plenty. You try to lift your hand. It floats upward like an old flag in windless weather. You point to the Chancellor. He flinches. You motion him forward. Right, you rasp. The word is sandpaper, dragged across velvet. He bows, produces a quill, waits. You forget what you were going to say. Everyone stares. A moment passes. Continue, you say, finally. With what? They wonder. With everything. With nothing. With the empire you dragged into modernity by the throat. Let them figure it out. You blink again. They all take it as a royal dismissal. The chamber empties faster than decorum allows. A few trip over their own cloaks. One man nearly drops a scroll. No one looks back. You hear the echo of boots, the creak of a heavy door, the collective exhale of men who feared your wrath and now fear your expiration. And then, silence. Real silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of finality. The surgeon enters, holding a bowl of something that no longer matters. He sets it down. You wave him away. He leaves without protest. You're alone. You stare at the fireplace. The logs have turned to ash. The embers still try to glow. They won't last long. You remember being young. You remember riding at dawn, hunting at dusk, dancing with women who smiled because they wanted to. You remember issuing decrees with a roar, swinging swords with precision, charming entire kingdoms with your chin alone. Now, you issue wheezes. You blink like a prophet. And when you speak, they run. The official word is that you passed peacefully in your sleep. The truth is less poetic. You exhaled your last breath like it owed you something. A wet, rattling sigh that echoed through the bedchamber, bounced off stone walls, and made the candlesticks shiver. No final words. No whispered prayers. Just the sound of a body surrendering. A groan from deep within, as though even your soul was reluctant to leave a vessel so bloated with unfinished business. They came to confirm it at dawn. A priest, a doctor, a man with no name but too many rings. They stared at your remains like they weren't sure if the job was done. The physician checked for a pulse, then checked again, then decided not to check a third time because the smell had already begun. Within hours, the news spread. King Henry is dead. King Henry the Great. Henry the Lion. Henry the Large. The country mourns, bells toll, nobles sigh in relief behind closed doors. The bakers weep because your appetite is finally finished. The body is prepared, which is to say wiped, wrapped and sealed inside a coffin that groans under your weight. The wood is thick, the bolts tighter than your old codpiece, and yet it's not enough. Decay doesn't care about royal titles. The journey begins. You are to be paraded across the countryside, through towns that once feared your sword and now fear your stench. The sun beats down. The wheels creak. The horses seem to know they're part of something cursed. Somewhere near Sion Abbey, the coffin gives up. It ruptures. The tales are whispered in pubs and behind altar cloths. That your abdomen exploded, that the lid cracked, that the corpse of a king wept fluids onto the church floor. The custodians mopped in silence. The clergy looked to the heavens for meaning. God, famously diplomatic, said nothing. Your courtiers blamed the weather. The stench could not be blamed on clouds. The royal procession continued. Stoically, heads high, eyes watering, the banners drooped with embarrassment. Children were told to look away. Birds flew in the opposite direction. At Windsor, they rushed the burial. No grand delays, no theatrical mourning, just a fast descent into the crypt, as though the ground itself had requested urgency. You were placed beside Jane Seymour, the only wife you called beloved. She, lucky woman, had the decency to die before your ulcer did. The stone was rolled into place. The air cleared. The silence returned. And still, something lingered. Not the body. The body was dealt with. It was the memory of a king who rewrote England's soul, and then rotted so fiercely his coffin cracked in protest. A monarch who severed heads with flair and alliances with boredom. A man who commanded nations, then decomposed in full view of God and Gardner. They carved your name deep into marble. Henry Rex. Iron letters, strong, proud, eternal. But beneath it, wood softens, flesh liquefies, and the smell of power gone sour seeps into the stone. You rot in state, literally, and no one dares open the lid again. They say your name with reverence now. King Henry VIII, the man, the monarch, the myth. Children chanted in schoolrooms. Historians pin medals on your mistakes and call them turning points. You are remembered in stone, scripture, satire, and not a single soul mentions the verses you once scribbled in candlelight, because no one remembers your poetry. They remember the wives, of course, the 6-point saga. Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, like a nursery rhyme written in blood. Tour guides make jokes as they pass the tower. Your legacy is now a game of math and decapitation. You were once a lover. Now you're a punchline. They remember the break from Rome, the firestorm of doctrine, the bishops you replaced, the monasteries you tore down like they owed you money. You told England to bow to you instead of the Pope. It worked. Sort of. Centuries later, tourists squint at crumbling abbeys and call it religious reform. But no one recites the sonnet you wrote about Jane, the one where you called her your dove, where your hand trembled just slightly at the word grace. It still exists, buried in a dusty vault, ink faded, like a whispered apology. Nobody teaches that part, the part where you were soft, where you tried to be something other than hungry or angry or royal. They remember the leg. God, do they remember the leg? Entire textbooks are written about the smell, the ulcer, the bandages changed hourly, the servant who fainted mid-dressing. Even now, your corpse is a case study in rot. Medical students examine paintings of you like crime scene evidence. This is what unchecked power looks like, one of them says. No one remembers that you once danced, that you moved like a blade, quick, gleaming, proud, that your calves were once considered divine, that women swooned, that bards sang of your footwork. They remember the portraits, yes, but only the final ones. The swollen face, the hollow stare, the chin upon chin. You tried to rewrite your own history. You commissioned tapestries that flattered, statues that stood straighter than you ever could. You paid men to paint you taller, broader, more resolute. You wanted to be remembered as a warrior king, a lion of law, a living legend. Instead, you are remembered, vividly, but not rightly. Your legacy is bloated, like your body. It oozes significance, but loses shape the closer you look. People pick the parts they like, the drama, the scandal, the executions, the meat. Nobody teaches the night you cried alone over a miscarried heir, or the time you tried to compose music for the lute and broke it in half in frustration. Nobody tells children that once. Just once. You kneeled before God in private, without fanfare, without robes, and asked if you were still redeemable. That moment is forgotten. But the codpiece is not. You've become a silhouette, a thunderous footnote. They sell mugs with your face on them. Novels romanticize you. Comedies ridicule you. Scholars dissect your choices like frogs on a table. And the poetry? It sleeps. Unbothered, unread, unloved, which might be your greatest punishment, or perhaps your only peace. The coffin was sealed. Not delicately, not ceremoniously, sealed the way one closes a door on a house fire. Bolted, weighted, wrapped in prayers, and lowered into the crypt like a secret too dangerous to leave above ground. It landed with a thud. Even the stone around it flinched. You were laid beside Jane Seymour, the only wife who died before you could ruin her. They say it was your wish, to be buried with the one you loved. Others say it was just convenient. She already had a spot. She didn't argue. Dead women rarely do. St. George's Chapel absorbed you. The choir sang. The nobles sniffled into lace. The bishops waved incense like it might scare off whatever lived in your leg. Nobody mentioned the rumors, the rupture, the puddle beneath the coffin, the royal surgeon fainting mid-embalming. It wasn't the first time your presence cleared a room, but it was the last time you'd leave one. The stone slab above you is modest, considering. Just your name, your title, a date. Nothing about the ulcer, nothing about the odor. Nothing about the wives or the kingdom you tore from the Pope's grip like a dog with a stolen loaf. Just the facts, just the crown. But the smell lingered. Long after the service ended, long after the crypt was sealed, long after the mourners went home and tried to forget how their shoes stuck to the chapel floor. It lingered in the wood, in the mortar, in the bones of the place. Priests noticed it during morning prayers. Tourists noticed it centuries later, but assumed it was part of the charm. You left behind more than policy. You left behind a scent, something between old wine and divine punishment. It clung to velvet. It haunted the pews. It made candle flames flicker in otherwise windless rooms. The organ wheezed in strange keys when played near your tomb. People said it was the acoustics, the air, the weather, but deep down, they knew. It was you. The monarchy endured, sort of. Your children took turns breaking the kingdom in different ways. Edward coughed his way to an early grave. Mary brought the fire. Elizabeth brought the theater. And through it all, St. George's kept you. Silent, festering, famous. Time passed. The monarchy stumbled into modernity. Thrones grew decorative. Crowns became hats. Kings became celebrities. They waved from balconies instead of battlefields. But even as empires collapsed and fashions changed and entire civilizations forgot how to curtsy, one thing remained. Your smell. No one could pinpoint it. No source. No obvious cause. The chapel was cleaned, scrubbed, blessed. Still, it lingered, not just in the air, but in the stories. In the uneasy glances shared by groundskeepers, in the footnotes of tourist guides, in the way some visitors left with a headache and a memory they couldn't quite explain. You became legend, not because of how you ruled, but because of how you lingered. People spoke your name with awe and discomfort. They admired your portrait, but stood several feet back. They quoted your laws, but burned candles nearby. Children dared each other to touch the crypt. Some swore it was warm. The bones of kings are supposed to rest. Yours simmer. There are whispers that your coffin has shifted, that it groans in the night, that sometimes, when the chapel is empty and the moon hangs low, the stone above your grave sounds like it's breathing. Not a lot. Just enough. Enough to remind the world that you were here. That kings do not vanish. They ferment. They perfume the centuries with choices made and necks severed, with swollen legs and swollen egos, with a hunger no banquet could satisfy. Your bones are buried. But the smell? That's forever. You were king. You were anointed by God, feared by men, adored by some, obeyed by most. You entered rooms like thunder. You signed death warrants before breakfast. You rewrote the laws of heaven and earth because a pope wouldn't annul your marriage, and you didn't like being told no. You were legend, a war horse of a man, a monarch who rode into battle in gleaming armor, thighs like tree trunks, chest like a battering ram. You hosted feasts that could bankrupt cities. You built palaces like gods build mountains. You gave England her own church, her own destiny, her own stench of glory. You were pus. By the end, your body was more wound than man. A leg that rotted, a belly that gurgled, a breath that came and went, like a ghost that wasn't sure it wanted to haunt you anymore. Your royal robes were soaked in lineaments, and your once proud figure had ballooned into something between furniture and warning. You changed England forever, and then you festered. There are two versions of you, the one they teach and the one they smell. They teach the warrior, the reformer, the tyrant king with a glint in his eye and a sword in his hand. They recite your acts with trembling reverence, your break from Rome, your patronage of the arts, your insistence that God should answer to the crown. They gloss over the ulcers, the pus, the sour hum of infection that trailed you like a disgraced herald. But your courtiers remember. They remember opening windows discreetly mid-audience. They remember dabbing scented cloths under their noses during council meetings. They remember trying not to retch while bowing. Some swore they saw the tapestries curl. One courtier claimed the royal dog fainted. Another said your leg barked first. This is what history smells like. Not parchment and perfume, not libraries and nostalgia, but rot, salt, spilled wine, soiled linen, the sour panic of a dying empire in a gilded room. That was your court. That was your legacy. Not just carved into stone, but soaked into the floorboards. You had 6 wives. You loved them. Briefly. Then blamed them. You sought sons and found trouble. You kissed lips that would later curse you. You made promises with your mouth and broke them with your neck. Your marriages were maps of your moods. Passionate, paranoid, performative. Anne Boleyn haunts every retelling. The court whisperers still ask if she bewitched you, or merely reflected the monstrous glint in your own soul. Catherine of Aragon died, exiled. Catherine Howard died too young. Jane Seymour died, giving you the one thing you wanted. A boy who would also die, too young. And Elizabeth? She watched it all, quiet, calculating, learning how to survive a father who roared like a lion and bled like a butchered ox. You played music. Once. Before the swelling. Before the wheezing. You wrote melodies with trembling fingers and thought they might outlive your appetite. You composed lyrics about love, loyalty, and longing, and buried them under roast swans and parliamentary decrees. You hunted stags. You hunted heretics. You hunted a version of yourself you could never quite catch. Young, virile, invincible. That man died long before your body did. And then you stopped. Stopped walking, stopped dancing, stopped pretending you were anything other than a man trying to out-eat death. When the end came, it wasn't thunderous. It was wet. Your final hours were a symphony of groans, fevers, and slow leaks. The once mighty king reduced to fluids and fragments. Your chamber pot was fuller than your lungs. You called for God. He did not call back. Now you lie in St. George's Chapel. A name on a slab, a myth in a textbook, a cautionary tale with a crown. They say you rest, but the air disagrees. Something lingers. Because power does not vanish, it curdles. History remembers your victories, but the walls remember your decay. The stones you walked on still whisper. The chair you died in still creaks. The servants still flinch when they hear your name, though they've been dead for centuries. You were king. You were legend. You were pus. And England? She remembers all of it.